I'm old school, man. I mean, get details from anywhere, really. People are so lax. Bank accounts, IDs, Facebook accounts. It's there for the taking.
I used to be the best. I mean, we would just send out emails, keyloggers, you name it. They'd click on links, and we were taking in money hand over fist, baby. Guy was gorgeous. You know, those were the days, man.
I think you've got to take it seriously. I like to get into character, which for me means taking it down a little bit. If you believe it, then they will. I do mostly call centre stuff. Great thing is they're low paid, couldn't care less. Well no, see this is the thing, I don't know the password. If you could, that would be ever so helpful. Yeah, I know it's a little bit naughty.
Well, everybody cares now. Up until then, people really didn't care. They weren't aware. Oh, it's not their company, they just work there.
People were getting training at their jobs, but it wasn't working. It was beautiful. Then Jim comes along with his humor, oh ha ha ha. Guy's a riot.
If the weather's nice, I like to take a trip out. Dead easy. Smokers, oh, they already feel guilty for being there. 2 cups of coffee, sly look. Got the run of the place. USB keys, files. Twist and shout. Awareness, education.
It's embarrassing is what it is. Jim took my livelihood, and that's something I'm not going to get back.
Somebody had to do something.
We make it funny for everyone, ha ha. Not laughing now, are you?
Hello? So it's okay, I escaped. I said I'd write them a social media policy and they let me go. Tit for tat really. But thanks for coming along today, I appreciate it. I just wanted to ask if you'd heard of a certain type of presentation, because I wanted to talk about that with respect to today's presentation, called Pachachka. Sometimes people pronounce it as Pechakucha. It's a Japanese movement for PowerPoint, and basically they set a set of rules. It's very popular, there are meetings going on all over the world in lots and lots of different countries, and the rule is, and it's a backlash against traditional PowerPoint presentations where, you know, you drone as 500 slides and it's packed full of information. The rule is there's 20 slides, 20 seconds per slide, images only. That's the rule. If you can tell your story with that, it's a great movement actually. It's genuine, this, it exists. If you look up Pechakucha, P-E-T-C-H-A K-U-C-H-A. That's the Japanese symbol for it. That'll help a lot, won't it, really? Pronounced Pachachka. If you calculate, if you do your sums, that's 6.6 minutes this presentation should last. Okay? Should. This is not one of those. Sorry. Okay, so a little bit about me. It wasn't easy growing up as the bastard love child of Jeremy Paxman and Eddie Izzard. You know, born with an acute knowledge of business and commerce, but an overwhelming desire to run off with the circus. It's kind of the mix that's in the company, really, but we think we've got a great sense of humour, but also we do understand communications problems. And every bit of communication should be there to solve a problem for the business. That's what we firmly believe. Our sort of cause, I don't like mission statements, I think they're banal and rubbish, but this really is to bring some kind of reality back to business and business to employee communications, using intimacy and authenticity to feed a starving workforce. Well, they are starving because they're fed brand compliant media, usually information heavy, usually, if it's a compliance issue like security, they have to read it as part of their contract. They have to go through a PowerPoint presentation or online e-learning or something like that. They have to do it and tick a box. You and I both know that that doesn't mean they've understood it necessarily, or worse still, they've not really engaged with it. And they may not change their behaviour as a result of that. I know one executive that said to me that when he was going through his compliance training, he paid his teenage daughter $30 to fill it in after she'd done her homework. That's actually an extra money. It got him accredited, and it also meant she was really good at information security. Some of the areas we work in are transformation and change management. Those images are from a sort of a campaign that we put together for a big telecommunications company. I think it was a statistic, Christine, you told me this, was it something like 7 out of 10 change programs, transformation programs fail. It's quite scary when you think of the amount of money that goes into a transformation program. And one of the biggest jigsaw pieces that goes into that picture of failure is the communications plan. Because I think that, you know, the management are the ones directing the change. They're the ones with the vision, they're the ones pulling everything forward. The people at the coalface, the people who actually do the work, also, contrary to popular belief, want change. Quite often if you talk to people at that level, they'll say, yeah, we think it's a good thing. We need to keep up, we need to stay ahead, we need to react. It's very old news that you need to change. Yeah? It's the intransigent middle layer of management who have the most to lose sometimes, or at least perceived to have the most to lose. They're the ones that dig their heels in. They are the gatekeepers of access to the leaders, and they are the ones that control the layers below. So they also control the flow of money in and out of different budgets and that kind of thing. And so really, if you can't get them on board, then you really are stuck with a transformation program. Okay, so we've worked in areas like, you know, internal communications for the marketing department, external salespeople for training for them and awareness, and as I mentioned, change management. And as I say, a niche market for us that exploded was information security. This is an example of a campaign that we did for an insurance company in the US called Assurion. They specialise in cell phone and handset insurance, or protection as they call it. They don't use this word insurance because they don't think they'd sell any. That was just 2 characters from a series of films that we made that were hugely successful for them. Even within the first 10 days, they were seeing sales increases of 30% across a sample of 25 stores because of the nature of the little comedy series that we created for them. It was a massively successful campaign, that one. On information security, we're very proud of one of our recent clients, our recent additions to the fold, which is Warner Brothers from Hollywood, who contacted us to make a series of short programs about information security and mount a campaign for them. Obviously very proud, and we also had access to the posters, which we could rewrite and recast, which was fun. So people would double take the posters, because they used to kind of seeing the poster with Robert Downey Jr. and Zach Galifianakis. But these are our guys from the film, so that was quite good fun. Other clients include Sony and Barclays, and there's some other names that we've worked for, not just in information security, but across the board with this sort of work. Okay. I'd like to show you a couple of clips now, which unfortunately for copyright reasons can't be included in the video, so apologies guys, but you know where we are. Okay, that was for Experian, not too far away from here in Nottingham, actually. One of the closest companies we've ever worked for. This is the work that we do for Sony. I like the idea that they're trying to integrate superheroes back into society by letting them work as interns in your company. I think that's a great idea. Why did we land on information security as a niche market? Essentially, it's very difficult to make it look sexy. You know, there were incidents, for example, one customer had an incident where a disk was lost. Now, it didn't surface, the information on it never came to light, but the information that was on it was a major tender document for a massive multi-million-dollar project. And they were terrified that the competition might get hold of this document. And so they rewrote their entire security policy to try and deal with this issue. And what happened was, nobody went to the website to read that document. Who knew? So we got the call to say, how can we make people read this? And I said, well, I don't know, you can either threaten them or pay them. And neither of those ideas were going to fly on the budgets that they had, and also the illegality of actually hitting people, making them read a document. So what we came up with was a series of short, humorous videos, and the contract with the viewer is essentially that is if you give me 2 or 3 minutes of your time, we will entertain you. That's it. It's a really simple contract, essentially, because then you change the whole dynamic of the communications and training arrangement to a pull dynamic rather than a push. Because a lot of people in the room are probably responsible for sending out information, the broadcast model. Yeah, if I tell you everything I know regularly, surely some of it will stick, you know. But the opposite model we find more effective, where you make something that's sort of viral because it's very specific to that group of people, i.e. everybody that works for that company, and it's a pull because people go, actually, do you know what? That was quite funny. I might mention that to somebody at the water cooler talk. That's an American term, really. We don't really talk around water coolers here, do we? It's the smokers group, usually. But they'll mention it to their friends and their colleagues, or they'll send a link on internally, and that happens a lot. Have you seen this? This is brilliant. Have you seen that information security video? It's brilliant. That's a sentence you don't hear very often. And so then that acts as the firework to attract people to a landing page where there's more information. And actually, once you're in that mode, and once it's made you laugh for 2 minutes, you might go, actually, do you know what? I don't know how to pick a good password. Click. Frequently asked questions. What do you mean encrypt an attachment? What do you mean? The uptake is far, far higher because you've set up a rapport with the person. So they're open to the information. It's just really helpful. And then the trick is to not make it one firework, but to let a firework off every couple of weeks. So people go, oh, what the next one is. Yeah? So that's why information security. Also, the interesting thing we found after doing a bit of research with some clients was that the old way of doing it involved compliance training, and I'm not sure what sort of training you guys are involved with, but this is, you know, necessary as part of your employee contract to do this training. So what they would do, this is taken literally from one particular client conversation. So we make them do the compliance training so that if they breach the security, we can sue them because they ticked a box saying that they read the document or they finished the training. Good. So then presumably you have to, I don't know, find some more people because you sued them all. Or whatever. And we felt that if people just understood the context around what you're asking them to do, they'd probably do it because they felt it was the right thing to do. Just putting it out there. You know, so actually explaining context, really helping them understand and entertaining them a little bit, just raising their awareness. Most people aren't against picking a strong password or, you know, remembering to zip up an attachment or something. You know, it adds a couple of seconds to their day, but they'll probably do it if they understand how important it is. Especially if they understand it's connected with the safety and security of the company and therefore their job. So anyway, that's kind of the formula that was in play at that particular customer. And so the IT department or the information security department put on their own campaign, and so they'll find a picture of a padlock because it's a sort of symbol of security. That's like send out a postcard with a padlock on it or something, and then some bullet points on the back that say do this, don't do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. So they're there to spoil the party, basically. But that's not creativity, and it's not that engaging, and they've seen it a million times. And I'm like, really? This is the best you could come up with? So I've talked about the pull method of engagement. One force of nature that we do come up with is the internal communications department, which have a set of brand guidelines that have to be adhered to. The trouble is, if your creative idea is set in the 16th century, when they didn't have Helvetica Medium, what do you do? You know, because you've just killed your idea by having to use that font and not oldie worldy or whatever. My point is that the brand guidelines, we forget what they're for, and for those of you that are fans of Nancy Schlesinger will know probably all about objective setting, and the idea that if you look at the objective of a brand, it's so that somebody in a warehouse in Calcutta can label a crate properly without it being in red crayon. It's to bring up a lower level of standard to raise up to a standard. It's a minimum standard of communications. It's not meant to be a ceiling to creativity. It's not meant to stop you go beyond that point. And so working with the brand guidelines and the department that polices them is interesting. We usually try to get them involved really early, because if we can get them excited about the ideas, they'll help us find a way of presenting it that doesn't contravene or ruin their sort of standards. And so we're really looking for clever ways of positioning creativity in a shell that can still be brand compliant, the shell. So, for example, the logo at the start of the video, which fades out and then the video starts, or if it's a poster like with Barclays, we had movie posters as part of the creative. But of course, to follow a traditional brand guideline, it wouldn't have looked anything like a movie poster, because there are certain fonts and a certain way a poster is that you have to follow. So we put the movie poster at an angle within the shell of the blue background and the standard bar across the bottom. And so the poster was on the poster, if that makes sense. And that was their idea. They said, we understand that you can't break it in that way, so we'll have to think about how best to present it. And of course, then it's automatically approved. This is the great thing, it's pre-approved. So you go out and print the posters and they're fine, you know, they built them. So let's talk about engagement. How do we engage employees and customers and partners and third parties? It can start with something as simple as language. The reason that so many companies speak in this sort of brochure-speak way, you know, this anodyne, cold, sort of horrible, you know, we at AstraZeneca believe, blah, 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 you know. Everyone's guilty of it, so I'm not just picking on you. But the idea that businesses grow up with a language, and they use it to suggest a club that you can belong to suggest that they're specialists. In the same way that a policeman develops this weird way of speaking that sort of says, you know, on the night in question, the perpetrator moved off in a northerly direction. So why don't you just say the guy that did it ran away? Because they're given evidence in court all the time, so they develop that manner, and it's something they feel they have to do because they hear other people do it. So a language, just simply changing the use of language within an organisation can help. And now with the proliferation of social media, a lot of the time we are up against that as a standard now. It's expected that you will be personal in your communication. Yeah? Put some personality into it. Now there is a worry from brand departments and communications people that if you start to do that, and we're a global firm, the nuances will cause trouble in other areas. If we're not clear, we might lose clarity. Now it's possible, I guess, in certain very rare circumstances that you might lose some clarity if you are too colloquial. But that's a really small price to pay for the massive benefit that a personal connection will make. If people go, wow, who wrote this? Wow, that speaks to me. It's not about a we or a royal we. It's not a directive. It's a conversation. And it's that kind of language that we really need to sort of develop within the organisation. So it can start with something that doesn't require any kind of budget, just the language. There's a great one. I can't really read it from there, but on the bottom of that carton it says, "Stop looking at my bottom." Innocent smoothies are great because if you read the small print, it'll sort of say, no additives, no colouring, no preservatives, no dead slugs, no gravel. In the iPod terms and conditions of the iPod Shuffle, and nobody reads the terms and conditions, you just tick it and move on, it says do not eat somewhere in there. There's a little joke put in by the legal department. Just, it really does, it connects with people. People appreciate it and they're being treated like human beings. Let's see. Okay, so let's talk about how we build a communications plan, how we create the firework and all that kind of thing. This is what we call a creative hierarchy. I don't like pyramid graphs, so I've picked a different type of pyramid because it'll be more entertaining. Any piece of communication, whether it be a video or a poster or an email or a postcard, really should centre around one concept. Given the amount of traffic flying around an organisation today, you are lucky if you get that one concept through the door. If you're giving a presentation, maybe you'll get away with 2 or 3, but within any section, you really are asking people to understand one concept. That's the rule that most companies break, and I'll explain why in a moment. Because when I asked Barclays to give me 5 headings for 5 films, so that each film could be about a single concept, they said, we've been working for weeks on this, we've really struggled and we've got it down to 26. It's like, oh. Now I went dancing in the streets because I thought, oh, you've got a budget for 26 films, great, you know. That wasn't the case. But it's difficult. And the reason it's important to pick one concept is because it is a hierarchy. No matter what the medium is, no matter how much money you've got, you can get that one idea across using creativity. The idea, or for want of a better word, the sort of creativity, is when you've got your concept, which might, for example, be, what's a good example? I'll pick the car industry because they are very good at using metaphors for things. The Volkswagen Polo was marketed a few years ago as being very small and strong. And the whole commercial was shots of people under threat, like rugby players bearing down on somebody, or an explosion happening with firefighters, and they're all crouching down like that and making themselves smaller. And the message was that, have you noticed, you always try to make yourself small when you want to protect yourself. And at the end it just had a shot of the polo and it just said, strong. And it was a very powerful metaphor. Yeah? So that was their creativity. Now that would have worked on a postcard with stock photography. That could, you know, the language was very, very simple, but it was one concept. They didn't say it's strong, oh, and it's economical, and it comes in a range of different colours, and. Because if they had, it would have just been information. It wouldn't have been an idea. And that's the difference, and that's the mistake most people make with internal communications, or even customer communications for that matter, is they come from, in business to business, we are all about the information. The next level down, I've talked about this, the execution. Is it a postcard? Is it a film? Is it an email? Am I using language? Am I using a font? Am I using a controlling image? Whatever happens, this doesn't change. The concept remains the same. We can stay with the concept no matter what we're doing. Because if our concept is, with passwords for example, question the person trying to get in, challenge the person trying to get past a certain point, then the idea might be, in medieval times they said, what's the password outside the portcullis? And then if it's medieval, then your execution needs medieval fonts and no digital calculators or, or mobile phones. And finally, at the bottom of the hierarchy, which the least important thing is the thing most companies start with, the information. Because when we've got our idea and we've thought about how we're going to execute it, now finally we'll cherry pick the 2 or 3 bits of information that will support that one concept. That's where the information is useful, that's where it's targeted, and that's what will get remembered. The other thing is to bear in mind that this also forms a model for a communications plan, where your one concept might be here to draw people in and go, oh yeah, I have a problem with that, or I understand that. And then when you've got their attention and you've opened up essentially a rapport and a channel of communication, you can offer more information. So what I'm saying there is, really with the information layer, make sure that it's the right amount of information and that there's no barrier to that information. Make it downloadable and usable and user-friendly, clear in the language, conversational if necessary, just real. I would sort of keep it real, really. And that the problem really is that many companies try to go upstream. They'll start with a meeting going, okay, so what do we know? Right, well, we know loads. Turns out we know tons of stuff. God, what? I've got 20 pages here on how to choose a password alone. We've got loads of stuff. Now, obviously, they then push that upstream, and it gets whittled away. Well, it's too much, less than, right, we've whittled it down to 26 things. Okay, that's fine. Let's put that in a film or a video or a document or a PDF. It's very long. We need to cut it down even further. Can we use fewer words or shorter words or read faster? Or, it's all about trimming the information. And it's all broken. By the time it gets to the top, people don't really know what the one idea is or what it's about, because they're trying to cram information into a smaller and smaller space. That's all they're trying to do. And that isn't an idea that people will remember. And actually, it damages the information even to try and strip it down that much to get it into a bite-sized thing. Because people go, we've got to make a video to get people to buy into this thing, and it's obviously it can't be more than 2 minutes. 2 minutes, just 2 minutes. I mean, I've seen loads and loads of movies I've loved, and none of them were 2 minutes long. So, I'm evangelical about this. I get quite frustrated with the way that we embrace the security of information. And I understand that, because a lot of people, certainly in marketing, in B2B have come up through the business. So they may have been a lawyer or an engineer or a chemist or whatever, and they've been really good at that, and they've got great product knowledge, and they're pretty personable, so they've got reasonable communication skills. And then they get promoted into marketing, and it's great, because they've gone from service or sales engineer into marketing, and then they've ended up in a position where, sorry, is that a note of recognition there? They've ended up in a position where they're expected to make creative decisions, but what they know is information. So there's never any real training in the way creativity can help you solve a business problem. Okay, brand or bland. We've already sort of covered this, and I've already talked about how the brand can get in the way, and we need to remember what it's for. It's for uniformity and consistency, and when you're trying to get a firework up there, it's the opposite of uniformity and consistency. So you have this tension between creativity and the brand. Now, if you're a consumer brand, quite often that brand is already creative. If you're Nike or Coca-Cola or whatever, it already uses creativity very well to engage a market. So they're used to it, kind of. But in business-to-business communications or internal communications, we think that that's nothing to do with us. We think that we're in a different world and we have to use information. And so the brand is something that helps us create a piece of design that looks nice and isn't going to get me fired. So that's what's going to happen there. I'm going to follow brand guidelines and I'm going to get that information out there. And that's my job. Did people engage with it? Did people change their behaviour? Not my job. My job was to get that document out there. Okay? So I think the system is broken in that respect. The reason we shy away from doing brave things, the old saying that nobody ever got fired for buying IBM, is that we don't want to lean into the problem of creativity because actually we don't understand it and it could get us fired. I understand that. I think that's why more education and training on the nature of creativity in business is required. I think it's a really vital part of business. Everybody talks about creativity in business. They say innovation and creativity are essential for survival. The constant change that happens, that people talk about it a lot in business terms, but it's never applied to the actual communications, the bit where it's supposed to be applied to, especially in business to business, I believe. So, there's a question I'm often asked, which is, Jim, you make these sort of really cool little comedies. Is somebody in Jakarta going to get it? You know, and actually we uncovered quite a lot of research to suggest that compared to a talking heads video by the chairman, it's still more effective because if you're clever with the scripting, these things are multi-layered. Do you know how these kids' movies these days are... who's got kids? Put your hand up if you've got children. Okay, nearly. Tomorrow, Ross, you'll be putting your hand up. That's right, I was about to have a baby. So. It doesn't look it from here, but it's the light, in the right light, you can tell. But basically, when you've got to sit through those kids' films, they're very clever now. Pixar will make them really cool. I love watching. I watched... Rio was I went to see last time. Lots of in-gags for grown-ups, lots of movie references that we'll get. The kids like the characters and the situations and the slapstick. We're loving the sort of nod to the parents that sort of says, "You see that? That was in Scarface." Nice, you know. And they're very clever. That's a layered communication. Yeah, they're communicating to two completely different markets with the same piece. What we're saying is that if we're creating scenarios, like I've shown examples of today, where there are vivid characters, and we kind of get it, there's enough action that if you turn the sound off, you'd probably get what was going on, really. And so that's still a vivid picture and a story. We are hardwired to remember stories. We're not hardwired to remember information and multiple bullet points. That's not how our brain works. Generations ago, when our mothers told us stories of the bears in the woods that would eat us or the witches that would turn us into a frog, to stop us running off into the woods on our own, that was for a reason. I believe that before IT, that's what happened. Stories are a very, very solid format. If you do any kind of memory training, stories are used there. Do the story of your journey to work. Do a story where things connect. It's very, very memorable format, and we're comfortable with it. Most of us have a storyteller within us. If you're telling somebody about how you got a nickname or you're telling a joke, again, it's something that lots of people are comfortable with. If I ask you to list your top 10 favourite films, you really struggle. You may have a top 10. In fact, I really worry about somebody who could just reel off 10 films that they like. That would scare me. So in terms of multicultural work and global organisations, it's still better to try. Now, maybe you'll get You won't get 100% of the cognitive response to the jokes and the nuances, but you might get 80%, and that's still a lot more than you would have got if you'd have just simply presented information. And the biggest crime is where video is used to present information, because it's a really expensive medium for delivering information. It delivers ideas and stories. It's not very good. It's a time-based medium. Once it's gone, it's gone. So delivering information, it's really hard to sort of keep track of it without rewinding. People don't know what it's good at. That's one of the problems. Before and after the firework. Well, first of all, if I'm going to send up a firework, I can walk out into any field with my milk bottle and my rocket, put it in the milk bottle and light it, and it'll go bam. And me and the guy walking his dog get to see it. It's important to promote these communications, to treat it as a campaign, even if it's internal. Because saying something is coming down the line, you know, presenting an HTML email with some images about what you're talking about, especially where you adopt the same theory that, say, the movie industry adopts, which is actually to raise more questions than you're answering. Don't tell people exactly what you're doing, make them curious. Coming soon, May 2011. And then you can put any picture or word after that you want, and people go, oh, what did he mean, aardvark? What did he mean? Killer aardvark? I don't know. You know, you can make people curious just by the way you present information. But if you say, coming soon, watch this space, you create an anticipation effect. So that when you do send up the firework, people are going, oh, I remember that thing, it's that thing. Do you remember that thing? We saw that poster, or that email, or that teaser trailer thing. So you create some anticipation. It's a proper campaign. And again, it's just thinking about how you present this information. Then you send up the firework. Hopefully, you don't send up just one firework. You spread out your resources over time, especially if it's something where you really want to change behaviour. And actually, you know, one of the companies, Experian, did their campaign in 1 week of the year, and we weren't sure that that was really the right way. They wanted, it was great. During the week, they had 400 visitors to their website in information security before that week, on average per week. By the end of the week, they were getting 30,000 hits on that landing page because they were releasing a film every day. But kind of 3 or 4 months on, and it's back down to sort of under 1,000. And that's the problem. Whereas if you get a momentum, you know how we're all into TV series, we all like to follow characters and stories and things. If we can get just a little bit of that effect going, then we will have a sustainable thing. And so the campaign over 6 months is far more effective, and it will embed itself as a cultural thing, more likely. And there's no reason you can't repeat the campaign later. Or take that collateral and introduce it into the induction scheme for new employees. You know, just every now and again, rerun the coming soon bit and point people to the landing page, and they can get access to the media and the instructions and the stuff that you want them to get. So that was before. Afterwards, how do we know if we've won? What was the measurement? It's not that revealing, actually. I mentioned hits on the landing page. Well, that's nice, but it's not a really accurate way of understanding engagement or behavioural change. And one of the weird things that happened with one of our customers was that before the campaign ran, over a period of, say, 3 months, around the world, they had a certain level of reported incidents in information security. When the campaign ran, those incidents went up massively, which panicked them a bit for about a day, until I explained that all of those incidents were happening anyway, they just weren't being reported. So what I encouraged people to do was pick up the phone and go, you know, that thing that happened in that video, that happened to me. Right, okay, so actually now they've got a handle on it and they know what the picture is, what the real picture is. They can control it, they can do something about it. So the news isn't not always what you'll expect, but some kind of measurement program. And certainly in information security, there's no easy fix for this, there's no easy answer. You really need to run clever surveys to get to ask the right questions. It's a specialist area, it's not an area we profess to know much about, but I know that surveys and the statistical analysis of communications is a real dark art in some respects, but you must try to do something that gives you a clue as to the change in behaviour, your return on investment. It's easy with sales training because you can see a rise in sales, but it's harder with core functions and softer topics, that kind of thing. So I'd like to end the presentation now with one of the episodes from our new customer, Warner Brothers. The campaign went live a few weeks ago, and they've had a lot of success with it. We're very pleased, and we're very proud to have them as a customer. You're privileged because only the people in front of me are allowed to see this. This won't be on our website anywhere, and we're not allowed to broadcast it. So I can only brag in front of you lot, really, which is not nearly a big enough audience for me, I have to say. So, okay. To make a programme for, you can imagine the sort of pressure we were under creatively to come up with something. I mean, that audience has seen it all and made it all. And it's been seen by the directors on the Hollywood lot. Those programmes have been shown as trailers before premieres of major movies in Hollywood. So that's probably our proudest moment. And have stood up pretty well, actually. They hold premieres on the lot in the private 600-seat theatre that they have on the Warner Brothers campus, and all the employees are invited to see the screening. And these, like I say, these are used as trailers throughout there, so it's a great way to get them out there, make sure everybody sees them. So, and they've had great feedback, and they're having great success with the campaign as a whole. There were a series of posters that we produced, as you saw earlier, mocking up popular films that Warner Brothers have made. Unfortunately, we weren't allowed to touch Harry Potter because it's off limits. J.K. Rowling wouldn't let us replace Harry and Hermione with the two guys, so never mind. So at that stage, all I have to say is, any questions? Anyone want to ask about any of the work that you've seen, or would you like to talk about any other areas other than information security? I'll just say one thing. Thank you, Security BSides. Next time I'll try and press the record button. Okay, any questions? No, I can't think of a thing. Can I just ask a question in the room in terms of communications? I know that perhaps some of the work that we've shown you today, sort of think, well, either A, there's no way we'd ever get clearance for that for budget, or we'd never get away with that as an idea, you know, just corporately. What sort of things do you think when you see those sorts of campaigns?
I think that's excellent from a compliance perspective. We go through compliance training, which is immensely boring and then tested at the end, things like that. I think, you know, to have the idea of having sort of light-hearted posters around, just to sort of get through the message, rather than just doing, as you say, on roads, so that it's...
Because the training's necessary, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this doesn't replace training. It adds as a method of driving people to know that A, the training is important, and where it is, you know, how to find it. And
but that's a much more user-friendly way to do it. But as you say, budgets, you know, fairly small business, are they really going to invest?
Oh, definitely. But I think that if you just extrapolate down that sort of hierarchy that I talked about, there are still ways of, a little creativity goes an awful long way. And I think if you just look at that hierarchy, and just think of your core concept. What is one, because everyone thinks that if we're going to send out communication, we better get everything in it. Otherwise it's a wasted opportunity, and that's, the opposite is true. I think if you send out one thing and people go, wow, I've never thought of that before, you make them truly engage with that issue, then they will beat a path back to you, and then you can talk about other issues. But I think this notion of, you know, the firework and then the pull theory really does work. And there are very simple things you can do that don't require, you know, huge expensive videos or that kind of thing. There are lots you can do just with language, just with simple, cool things. With one little idea that we suggested to a client was about checking the identity of somebody when they were in the building, or checking identity online, that kind of thing. To create a series of little transparent stickers. Lots of buildings have glass doors or glass walls and that kind of thing. And we had this idea of having a little campaign to talk about identity. And we stuck the sort of glasses and fake nose on the sticker on the glass, and you could walk up behind it and go like that. And that's a silly little thing, it's a silly little thing, but the number of photos that people will take on the other side of that glass, if you go, you know, it's great. And they can make lots of different types, and they can upload the photos, or they can send them to somebody, you can put them in the staff magazine. It's not that, you know, that sort of thing is not at all expensive, and takes a bit of thought, obviously, but the idea is to try and encourage that creative thought, because it just makes the communications more effective and memorable. And in terms of training, one thing that I'd like to think sort of pioneering to some extent, is taking, where they have gone to the extent of investing in a campaign like this, is that, oh, you're ready to kick us out, aren't you?
I'm getting ready to, yeah.
All right, okay. Basically, you can use characters that you've set up, like narratives that you're using, to put in the PowerPoint presentations that people will see at a later date. So you get that recall. Yeah, using a soundbite from the film or from a podcast or something like that. It's like, hey, you know, well done at the end of a module that you've completed as on an e-learning program. All of that just makes it a sort of holistic thing, and you remember some of the collateral that you created. Unfortunately, we are going to get kicked out of this room now, but I'm very happy to talk to anybody downstairs in the courtyard if you want to have a brief chat. But let me give you cards. Thank you for coming along.